So I want to turn now, man, if I can, here to the Chinese situation. Everything's going on with their economy. It's not good news, and I've been stressing this, and I think it's really important for people to be at least up to date on what's going on over there because it is going to impact us. They're the second biggest economic powerhouse in the world based on GDP. They're also our second biggest trading partner. Like Canada's second biggest trading partner, both import and export, is China. In 2020, it was something like I think we exported like 25 billion to China, and we imported like 75 billion. Like that is a huge amount. And that actually grew during the pandemic. It didn't contract during the pandemic. It actually grew. So they are a major trading partner for us, as they are with the entire rest of the world. So there's definitely a bunch of products that come into Canada that one way or the other originate in China because they are a producer of input items.
A ton of immigrants too. They have a lot of people that move from China that move here.
Yeah, totally. So, and that could have the counter impact because I think a lot of them are going to be trying to get out of China and trying to get their money here to Canada, which could be beneficial to us. But in the short term, their challenges are going to become our challenges. And the hits keep coming for China. Most recently, and this is an issue over in Europe too, these massive droughts. Right. And they rely on a lot of like hydroelectricity over there, especially in some of their industrial provinces that are effectively big manufacturing hubs for the entire world. And they're now having to do rolling blackouts, both at factories and for individuals, individual homeowners and small businesses and everything. So their consumer confidence is already in the toilet. Their businesses are already hemorrhaging.
Everyone knows like a rolling blackout is when they're literally shutting all the power off. So just imagine that you don't have power for a certain amount of hours every day.
This is something that's hard for us to fathom here.
Doesn't even make sense.
But they just turn off the power switch. And in a factory, well, that means production grinds to a halt for an extended period of time. It means that people aren't there spending money in their local economy. Like that has catastrophic impacts for them locally, and then when it reaches the manufacturing hub, it crushes us. And it's going to trickle down over here. It's already started, and that comes on top of all of the property stuff that we already had been speaking about.
It's insanity. The one thing I want to point out though, like just that you said about the immigration, the reason I think it would freeze up is not because people want to leave. But the Chinese government, to keep their economy alive, will put a lockdown on people leaving. Well, it's like, you can leave, but all your money is frozen. They're already doing that, where all your money is frozen in the country. So it's like
when those countries charge you money to leave when you're at the resort. Yeah. You're going to get back on your plane like, that'll be $200, please. Damn it. Yeah, they have big taxes on leaving that country.
The big thing, and you mentioned this earlier, that I thought was really, really interesting, I was just reading about it, is like to fix we have an inventory crisis where we don't have enough homes. They have too many houses, and they're not accomplishing all of the projects that need to be finished. So they've now started tearing them down. So their buildings that they had halfway finished or started and things like that, they are literally tearing them down to try and bolster the housing market there, which just sounds insane. And the thing that I'm just not registering in my dome is who's paying? Like, didn't a developer spend the money to build the building, and then they're like, all right, we're just going to tear this down now.
So,
this is wild. It's housing for 75 million people. It's not just like one building.
There's a pretty cool video circulating out there right now where they simultaneously demolish 15 high-rises at the same time, and they just crumble together. Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah. So basically, the idea here is that the market is now so oversaturated with these half-built structures that it's crippling the value of built homes. And we've seen this here in North America. I've talked about this before, I think, on the show. Detroit. When Detroit really collapsed, like, I don't know if some of these people have been to Detroit or not. Have you been to Detroit?
No.
I went through. I could not believe it. But it got to the point where housing was so cheap, and this was when all their factories closed there. All their car manufacturing dried up, and Detroit, as a municipality, filed for bankruptcy. Their houses were so cheap that if you were a person trying to sell your home, the problem was your neighboring house was vacant and being sold for $7,000. And 2 doors down, another house was vacant and being sold for $4,000. So how are you trying to sell your home for $40,000? And those are real numbers. This is how cheap this stuff was. So the city then went around and started demolishing all the abandoned houses to prop up the value of existing structures. And I was down there, and it was amazing. You'd have like occupied house, vacant, boarded up house, empty lot, occupied house. empty lot, boarded up house. Like, it was unreal. And it's the same sort of model that's happening right now in China. They are making this plan. Like, the government has actually seized the assets of Evergrande and some of these other big companies and is trying to figure out what to do with their projects. And they're realizing that for the good of the market stability and the value of people who already own stock, they're going to demolish a lot of these buildings.
So in both of those scenarios, is the government buying the property?
Oh, in this case, I mean, because of Evergrande's situation, they've taken it. Their assets have been seized.
Evergrande's like upside down, like massively. So they're just basically taking over their stuff. In Detroit, were they buying the properties?
The properties had been effectively abandoned, foreclosed on, and then they're gone.
Tax repoed.
Yeah, they would be probably equivalent here of like public trustee at that point.
Interesting.
Right? And there's also the other issues, like they become potentially dangerous with squatter situations, fires, etc. And this is part of the argument that they're making in China as well, is that these things are big environmental hazards just sitting there.
Yeah.
So they're going to reduce them to rubble. And the biggest one that's coming down the pipeline is in like this province. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this. Like the Hainan province, which is sort of like a beachfront Hawaiian sort of like vibe. Like it's a big destination. So Evergrande launched this massive project where they built an artificial island, and with resorts and amusement parks and all this stuff. But there is an entire spread of apartment buildings that are going to be demolished. It's 39 buildings in total. And interestingly, the mayor who backed this project and passed it and all these things is now in jail for bribery for the rest of his life because they take stuff seriously over in China. So that mayor who approved that project took bribes in order to get it across the finish line. We spoke about the corruption over there as well. He's now in prison for life, but they are going to demolish.
Such an intense system, man. It's just like,
oh, it's wild, man.
People are buying their way through stuff. They're throwing up buildings left, right, and center. Then they're like, oh, we did too many, so we're tearing them back down. They're just manipulating it. Like, they're literally playing like SimCity. Like, when this is what you do in SimCity. Like, City starts going to shit, and you're like, oh, crap. Cut these things, cut these things. Throw people in jail. Like, you're just like, it's literally that, but it's real life.
And like you talked about, like, it is the definition of wasteful spending. Like, all of this money that was invested in there, I mean, and now they're going to turn it to rubble. It's almost 3,000 apartments. Total.
Basically, need to start eliminating debt. This is where they're...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then valued at over $1 billion. And they're just going to knock it all down.
That one project. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what they're having to do to prop up their dying economy.
They've also started to cut rates.
Oh, they've been cutting rates, which is counter to literally the rest of the world because they're trying to get consumers out there confident. But you can understand that consumers aren't confident. Can you imagine being a homeowner right now that, say, has a half-completed project that you've been paying a mortgage on? Because we talked about in a previous episode, you pay a mortgage on this place before it's even built, sometimes years before it's built, and now they're running around tearing some of them down?
If I was in China, I'd be buying land. Contrary play, it's time to buy.
Oh, my gosh.
When everyone's running... and they're doing this, and they're giving it away, and they're tearing shit down, you got to get in there. Because at some point, China's not messing around. They're going to get to the point where the inventory is back to normal, and things are popping off.
Well, they aren't afraid to do the hard, unpopular things out there, and people may not like that comment, but we kind of dance around the subject, and we do these kind of half measures. They go extreme over there.
Nuts.
So, they're going to go extreme. If they have to tear down, 100,000 buildings, they'll probably do it, rightly or wrongly.
They have plans for 75 million
people,
apartments to go down.
How many?
The homes for 75 million people. So they maybe, in fact, that's two people per home, so maybe 35 million apartments are going to come down.
Holy man! So
they're going to be tearing down for a bit,
and that is the second biggest economy in the world, and our second biggest trading partner. So that matters. It matters.
Yeah.
And our biggest trading partner.
China's tearing down tower blocks and pausing construction on buildings that could house 75 million people.
Crazy.
That's
crazy.
Twice of Canada. That's all of Canada's real estate's just demolished.
Man, that's
over.
wild. That's wild.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.